Hi everyone, it's Margaret Manning here with lifeafterdeath.com. Lifeafterdeath.com is a community for people who are interested in the topic of life after death, about the afterlife, reincarnation, and topics related to spirituality. And we speak with the experts on topics that are relevant to this conversation, and I'm very happy today to introduce Annie Mattingley. Now, Annie is a writer and a speaker. She is an after-death communication researcher. Now, she was a hospice helper after the death of her parents and her fascination with this mystery of death. And after her daughter's suicide in 2010, though, her life was completely changed. And in conversations with her daughter, she found that a lot of people are having the same experience and wrote an amazing book. It's called The After Death Chronicles. And we're going to talk about that in our chat. But right now, I just want to welcome you here, Annie. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for inviting me, Margaret.
Oh, you're very welcome. And the reason that we are happy to chat with you is that you are doing things in the real world. I mean, this whole topic of life after death can be very nebulous, but you bring it down to the real world. And so I'd like to chat with you about that. Now, you've written this wonderful book on different experiences with life after death and conversations with the deceased. But I'd like to chat with you about the value in your mind of that conversation with those people and how ritual is so important in connecting with them.
Well, there's sometimes experiences, as mine were just totally spontaneous. My daughter was there, and I did not have to seek her out. But I know that many people who are grieving are seeking to have connection with their deceased beloveds. And there are a variety of ways that can be done, and rituals and altars and things that create a space in which that happens more easily, so that to help us to open ourselves for these experiences can be very satisfying. Altars don't have to be complex. I'm very big on altars, but it means you need a place, you need a time, and you need an intention. And all these create an invitation for someone you love to make connection. It doesn't always happen. There's a lot of mystery in all of this, so there's no guarantee. It's not like do A, B, C, and you've got it. But if you say, this is the corner of the table, this is the place, this is the moment, maybe even the palm of your hand, it's the altar. You could light a candle, you could say a prayer, you could simply say, I love you, Judy, just something as simple as that.
Yes.
And then be present in that space and that time to receive connection. And the gifts can be innumerable if that occurs.
It's really powerful. I'm loving how you're explaining this too, though, because it's got as much to do with their intention to communicate with you and let you know that they're okay and that there's a sort of that they're ready to chat with you as much as your desire to see them. The ritual kind of sets the tone for both of you to be free to talk and share.
One of my favorite things, and of course I'm a writer, so that's why, is to write a letter. And you can say anything in that letter. And you can say, I love you. You can say, I miss you. You can say, I'm really upset. You can say, I want to work out this thing that wasn't resolved before you died. This is troubling me. And then sometimes those letters, I do workshops in which people write these letters, and I see very profound things happen in this process. And then those letters can be burned to transform them, their energy, release their energy. But you could also mail the letter to yourself, and receive it later and read it, and possibly with new eyes. And sometimes people have a sense of resolution. Sometimes they have a sense of having solved a problem. Sometimes they have a strong sense of connecting.
hmm And I think that what you said earlier about giving them, honoring them, and giving them the opportunity to talk to you about something that may not have been a good experience for them, or may have been a surprise, or I mean, if it was an accident, for example, or in your case, unfortunately, a suicide, where they may have at the time not had the ability to explain, but now you've opened a space with that altar and that ritual to give them permission.
Mm-hmm. And I think if you are seeking connection, if you could establish a time for this ritual to occur,
okay,
a regular time, it's, that you leave work at 6 o'clock on Friday and that you don't usually do anything before 8,
right,
for example. And you say, okay, 7 o'clock on Friday nights, I'm going to do this. It sets up a rhythm. It makes that space part of your pattern, and possibly part of the deceased pattern as well. Because you may not feel this connection that you desire the first time or the third time. But if you make a point of at 7 o'clock on Friday night, I'm going to sit down for a few minutes and be quiet and make this invitation and have this intention, lighting the candle can help. It's got fire in it, and it's got energy in it, and it makes us a statement. And at a certain point, you may have profound changes occur, because usually we haven't finished everything when somebody dies. We're in a constant...
Even if you were very close, there's always little things. But it's interesting that you say this, though, because you said a time and a place and an intention. Those are the things. But describe to me what your altar looks like. I mean, what you mentioned, you could just put it on your hand. But have you got any icons or any little pieces of things that were precious to them? Maybe a bracelet, or do you do something like that?
I have an altar that it's not just for my daughter, Randy. It existed before her death, but now it has a number of photographs of her on it.
Right. Okay.
It has a tiny container in which there's just a little bit of her ashes. It also has a small carving that my father made, and it has other photographs of
this is people. Beautiful. Yeah.
Things that remind me and connect me. I mean, this is an odd little thing. I've not really ever talked about this, but my father had very oily skin. And he liked to carve, and he carved this little figure. If I'd thought of it, I could have brought it here, but it's in the other room. And he would oil that with the oil from his nose.
Oh, wow. So, just like his face oil, yeah.
So I don't have that skin, but nevertheless, when I look at that, many mornings, I just touch my nose and rub it onto this little carving that I have.
Wow, that's beautiful.
It feels like we're mingling we're something literal, something physical. That's maybe when I touch that, I get a little bit of him and his oils on my fingers, and he gets mostly face cream, I think. But,
facial oils. He wouldn't mind. But that's beautiful. That's great. It's so funny you mentioned this. The different photos and those kinds of things. I was talking actually to a woman who is a shaman, and we interviewed her on the shamanism and her experiences with transformation. And she talks about, in the shaman tradition, there's a black bowl altar that people use, and it's literally a black bowl, and in that bowl you can put things like you mentioned, that remind you of the person. And I only mention that because it's just kind of interesting that a lot of religions have these same vehicles, for honoring the deceased, even if your intention is not to talk to them, as it may be in other people like yours or other cases.
Well, I have a friend who's half Japanese, and she has a small altar which has, not identical things to mine, but photographs and other reminders on it. And most mornings she makes tea, not just for herself, but for her mother and her father as well. And
Wow,
she put
that's lovely. Nice.
on this, and that is to feed the deceased is a practice that happens in a number of cultures.
Yeah, that's a Chinese culture as well. It's really fascinating, but I think it boils down to what you said earlier, is that it's a way of honoring their memory in personal ways, ways that they would, if they, well, and I'm assuming that you of course think there is a person that's there in the afterlife, or there's some energy or soul that,
in essence.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So tell me a bit about that, because this is obviously the talk about life after death. What do you think happens after death? What do you think, now that you can look back on it with a conversation with someone who is there, what do you think it's like? What does she say it's like?
She didn't want to say much about what it was like. She told me she was, initially when I asked her, she told me that she was doing healing. And it was addressing her suffering, because I asked something about if there's anything I could do to help with that, because I knew she was suffering so much before her death.
Right.
And she was like, no, we deal with this here. And she didn't want to talk about it.
Wow.
And my sense, but this is just slightly educated guess, is that there may be a variety of ways that existence continues after death, and it may have something to do with our belief systems. So that if we believe
culture,
in a certain kind of a heaven, that's where it will be when we cross over. Mm-hmm. And if we believe that there's nothing, there might be nothing for a while.
Yes.
I'm not sure. There's still a tremendous mystery in all this.
It is a mystery. Well, I'm really happy to chat with you about this particular topic, because I think a lot of people, when they read your book, and we talk a little bit more in other conversations about what other people said that you interviewed about their experiences, they may want to try to reach out to one of their family members who's died. And if a ritual and having an altar is one way that you feel that can happen, that's a gift you can give them.
I hope they receive the gift.
Well, I want to mention that Annie's website is AnnieMattingley.com. We'll put it up there on the screen so people can see it. But you've written a book called The After Death Chronicles, and I would encourage people to check that out. It's I have not read the whole book, but I understand how you've organized it, and it sounds really intriguing. And I remember one of the quotes, someone said, "You don't read this book, you savor it." You just go through it. And I'm sure it brings a lot of emotion. Is there anything you'd like to say about the book that you would like to share with people?
Well, it's been a tremendously wonderful experience for me to see the effect on people who've read the book. Yeah. I put it out to the world as a gift, and it's been received that way.
That's lovely.
And people who have doubts have had changed their minds. People who have felt so separated from someone who's died have realized that separation is not as real as they thought it was, that the veil is much thinner than they think it is. And it's also a book that you can read, and you don't have to read the whole thing. You can just dabble here and there. It can be dropped into. It doesn't have to be read in order. And I think that there's also a time for reading it. Some find it difficult too soon after a death, but there'll be a moment when you can just pick it up and say, now is the time. Books are like that, I think.
Yeah. I agree with you. I was going to say, books are like that. They come at the right time in your life, and hopefully someone watching today has realized it's the time. Annie, thank you so much. We're going to talk about other topics related to the book and about your other research that you've done with this after-death communication. But thank you so much for being here for this particular conversation. It's been great. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our Life After Death YouTube channel and visit our website at lifeafterdeath.com. We are a community of people who are fascinated by the topic of life after death and subjects like near-death experience, the afterlife, reincarnation, and spirituality. Together, we are exploring and discovering these topics together with curiosity and an open heart.